Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me. It's always fun to come and share my story. It's always great to also be back on campus, also an alumni. So it's once a year I get to come back and see all the changes. Everyone can hear me okay? Yeah, cool. Let's see if this works. Perfect. So quickly, who am I? So as you know, my name's Adam. I'm the manager of live entertainment and event marketing or venue marketing at Maple Leaf Sports. Born and raised in a very small town in the middle of nowhere between Thunder Bay and Winnipeg, so there's not a lot going on. And I've always been very passionate about music and the music industry, but I didn't really know a lot about it. So what I'm going to go over today is really just start with telling you kind of my story. How did I get into the industry? Why did I get into the industry? And all those hurdles and the opportunities that I had. And then I'll dive more into kind of what I do today over at Maple Leaf Sports and Scotiabank Arena. And then answer any questions that you have and give you some insight into the industry today. But before I do that, because it's always nice to start a presentation with a video. In case you haven't heard of us at MLSE, here we are.
God's plan. God's plan.
So that's MLSE, I'm sure you've heard of it. There's a few famous teams in there that we work with, that we own. But before I really get started, so we're a lot of sports fanatics in here. Are we sports, entertainment? Who here really wants to go more into the sports industry? Just out of curiosity, cool. Anybody want to go into like the music industry, entertainment industry? Cool. Film, anything else? Or something completely different and you just happen to have to be in this course and it's not really for you? Yeah, okay, cool. So I'm going to talk mostly about entertainment and music because that's obviously my specialty. But sports is very, 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 very similar. So keep that in mind when you're hearing this. I always thought it was completely different and they were complete opposite ends of the spectrum until I really got working in the industry closely. So if you want to go and you want to be a talent manager, there's really no difference between an artist and an athlete. The label is like the league. So there's a lot of similarities, there's a lot of crossover, a lot of very different things as well, but a lot of crossover. So like I said, I've always wanted to be in the music industry. I always loved music, grew up in a very musical family. The typical, everybody sings, everybody plays an instrument. It's sickening at times. But I had no musical bone in my body, no matter how much I tried. So I always wanted to get into it, but what could I do? How could I do it? Tried drums, didn't work. Tried guitar, didn't work. Can't hold a tone or a pitch or anything like that. So growing up with all of this around me, always was inspired to see what could I do. Fast forward through most of my life, and my dad was always in a band, always touring, all that sort of thing. So we always had the equipment, we always had all this stuff. And got my first taste of it when my aunt was getting married again and wanted to not pay as much for the second wedding. So made my dad DJ the stag or the social or whatever you want to call it. And so he did. He had all the equipment for it. And when the wedding came around, he didn't want to do it. So he pitched it to me. And looking back, it was really just him offloading it and not wanting to do it and making his son do it. But I took it on and I thought it would be a fun opportunity and DJ the wedding. I'm maybe 12 years old at this point. Keep in mind, this is before Spotify. This is before you can hit play on a computer. It's CD binders. You're going through, big shiny tunes and finding out those tracks. So it was a lot different than it is today, but it was a lot of fun. And it got my first spark of entrepreneurship. It got my first spark of music and how music can actually become a business and you don't actually have to just play it. We all grow up thinking, the superstars are just superstars. And they've always been there. And, that's kind of unreachable. You can't really do that. So I discovered something that was a little bit more up my alley that I could do. And so after that first wedding, I decided, wow, this is actually really cool. This is really fun. And I can probably make some money doing this. So I decided that I would start my first business called Wildfire Music. Very random, but it worked. And so this small town that I was from gave me a really big opportunity because there's no competition. There's maybe one other DJ company, there's two other DJ companies. But there's a lot of weddings, there's a lot of school dances, there's still prom, there's still homecoming, there's all these things. And so by 13, 12, 13, I'm fully head over heels with this idea. And so I dove into it, and before you know it, I got the contract for my elementary school's dances, so Valentine's Day, all those things, and started to make some money. And didn't want to use my dad's equipment, so once I had enough, I would start to buy, one new piece every single time. Got the contracts for all the rest of the schools in town, including the high school, which was funny because I DJ'd prom before I was in high school. Which was really weird, actually, when you look back at it. But in the moment, it was both terrifying and very fun. So I grew that business to have multiple DJs. When my friends were buying a car, I was buying a utility trailer. It was very weird. But we grew it to be multiple cities and the largest in Northwestern Ontario. Then Bridezilla happened, and you get a little sick of DJing weddings every Saturday night. So I moved on and decided to not do that anymore. But it took a while because I still knew I wanted to do something in the industry, but I didn't know what concerts were at the time. You do, but you don't realize that it's actually something that can be done separately. Until I went to my very first concert. Not a bad first show, Aerosmith. So had to go to Winnipeg for it. It was a whole thing. It's a whole trip. We had to drive in, stay the night. And I don't remember much of it because all I could think of was, and I'm sure it was a great show, but all I could do was sit back and go, holy shit, look at this big show. How did this get in to this building today when there was a hockey game last night? There's a hockey game tomorrow. This show is, in Calgary the next day. How did this happen? Look at all these lights. Look at the staging. I'm looking at the front of house mix board. I'm all over the place, but not really paying attention to the show. At the time, my parents weren't exactly that happy about it, but it was a trigger. It really sparked this whole other level of interest of, wow, this is a machine, and they're all over the place all the time, and a concert will be in the building the next day. Little did I know I would be doing the same shows in Canada's biggest arena at the time, but that was kind of my goal. I was like, how do I get into something more along the lines of that and live music? Once again, no musical bone in my body, so how do I manage it instead? And decided when I got home that I needed to, move the DJ services into more of a live music thing. And we had a festival in my hometown. It was the largest fishing festival in North America at the time, so it had some notability. And they had everything that you needed for festivals. You had a big tent that held 2,000 people. They had the porta potties. They had the food vendors. They had the stage, the sound, the fencing, the security, the staff. But they didn't have any music. They didn't have anything other than a local band play. And local bands are fine, and that's great, but why not, get something a little bit bigger? So little old me, 16 at the time, I think, decided I'm gonna make these guys do more. So volunteered, very, very early on became the entertainment director, and I decided that we should probably do some big shows. Convinced the board to give me some budget. I picked up the phone, I did some research, and I started calling talent agencies. They had no idea who was on the other end. They didn't know I was a 16-year-old kid. But I had the festival's name, so that worked. I had no idea what I was doing, not one clue. To this day, I still don't know how I made it happen, but we booked Trooper. Has anybody heard of Trooper? Way before your time, classic rock band. We booked the band, sold out a show in no time. We sold 2,000 tickets. It was capacity. It was a huge success. So it opened my eyes to, okay, this is how you book a show. I had no idea how that worked. My dad had to sign the contract because you can't let a 16-year-old sign a contract for $15,000 for a band. And it worked, and it was fun, and it was once again another trigger of, okay, this is possible. We can actually do this. So I stayed on that board for 2 to 3 years. We booked bands every year. It was great. But then I wanted to break out on my own, and why am I making them money when I can make myself money? I had the entrepreneurial, drive in me at the time. So I decided to try and spread my own wings. And does anybody remember the band Faber Drive? Yeah. Okay. So back in the day of when Much Music was really the catalyst for bands, and that show Disband was around, I used to sit and watch disband, and then the moment after it would air, I would try and book that band because they had no notability, but they had enough to sell tickets, but not enough to charge a decent price at the time for the promoter. And I'll get more into that in a bit. But I saw that Faber Drive was on tour, and they were going to this town called Dryden, which was 2 hours north of me. Same size, exact same thing, 500-seat venue. And I went, why aren't they coming here? And how do I make them come here? Lucky enough, I look at the agent for Faber Drive, and it was the same agent as Trooper. So I already knew this guy. He had some confidence in me. So I booked it, scrounged up any penny I had to be able to make it happen. So as a promoter, what you have to do is you are responsible for everything that happens with that show. So I'll book the band. I have to pay the band whether people show up or not. I have to pay for the venue. I have to pay for the marketing. I have to do the ticketing. I have to do the catering, everything in between. And you hope that you sell tickets, and then whatever's left over is yours. It's great if you sell tickets. So luckily, I was on a lucky streak apparently during this time. We sold out in 10 minutes. So that was great. And I made no money because I had no idea what I was doing, didn't understand the deals and how they worked and all that. But it was the biggest learning opportunity that I ever had because I was able to sit and go, how did I sell 500 tickets in 10 minutes and walk away with $200? I didn't lose money, so it was a win. But it taught me a lot. So that sparked Wildfire doing concerts. So this is all just before I went away to school. I went to Lakehead for a year, and this is the part of the speech that I'm usually not supposed to say, but I hated school. I hated it so much because it just didn't teach me anything in university. I don't know if anybody went to university beforehand or anything like that, but I hated it. It was all theory. It wasn't teaching me anything, and me as a punk kid thought I knew everything instead. So I decided to get out of Lakehead, but while there I did meet my future business partner, so silver lining, and I came here. And they didn't pay me to say this, but this was actually the best decision I made. Coming to Fanshawe was an incredible experience. I learned so much that was invaluable. I had great teachers, many of which you probably still have. For example, my business plan that I made for my next business was made in Scott Dart's class. And I needed that at that time. So everything that I learned, I was putting into effect right when I learned it. It was great, I loved it, and I love coming back. But that really catalyzed me into taking that concert aspect and really doing it full time. So after college, I was bartending on the side, but decided to start Go Live Entertainment with my friend that I met in university. And so we went all in. We did the fake it till you make it approach. If we look big, we will be big. If we have a nice fancy website and we have fancy business cards and we have fancy this, fancy that. He was a graphic designer, I was the business end. It worked really, really well. It was a lot of fun, but we decided to jump all in. So like I said, with the promoter, you are forking out all that money. You have to pay 50% of the band's fee up front. So it's a bit of a barrier to entry with certain bands. When you're doing small ones, it's easy, but we wanted to get bigger fish. So if you're getting a band that's $50,000, you got to fork up 25 grand. That was tough. So you start bankrolling all these shows, and shows start paying for shows, and a small show turns into a medium show, and a medium show turns into a big show. And it worked really, really well, and we had a lot of fun doing it. We started with Fort Frances, my town, and then Dryden and Kenora, and then we took over Winnipeg as a market, Thunder Bay, and that was kind of our stronghold. And then we decided to upgrade that to Sault Ste. Marie, North Bay, and right here in London. So that was kind of our market. That's what we did. We did everything from every disband artist, which, funny enough, if anybody remembers Stereos and Neverest, did a lot of their tours, and they are coming back. This is what made me feel very old, was their 10-year reunion. They're coming back for Canadian Music Week for the first time, because obviously they're not together anymore. But yeah, 10 years ago, it was crazy. But Mariana's Trench, Carly Rae Jepsen, good old Hanson. We did a bunch of shows. It was a great time. But it's a risky business, and so I decided maybe as just out of college, maybe I shouldn't put all of my eggs in one basket. And I decided to move on and move over to a marketing agency called SDI Marketing. It's an experiential agency out of Toronto, so I started on some boring clients like President's Choice Financial and CIBC and all the FIs, the financial institutions, and moved over very quickly into our experiential and entertainment division. So I was overseeing all of our music strategy for clients. So we were talking with Woodbine Entertainment, helping them realize entertainment as opposed to just horse racing. We were producing shows for brands, so whenever Pepsi wanted to have something, we would produce the show for them. We did the world's largest inflatable Pepsi bottle downtown Toronto, and then we put a concert in it. We did the Do Tour Am series in Sun Peaks, BC, as well as downtown Toronto. So we would do the snow and ski, snowboard and skiing over in the mountains, and then we'd bring a stage and we put it at the base of the mountain and put on a rock show, which was quite a sight to see. It was definitely some of my favorite times. We then did a show J. Cole at the base of the CN Tower in Roundhouse Park, which was a lot of fun. But this definitely shot me into a different era, and this is where I realized that sports and entertainment are really the same thing. It's quite literally the same thing, and I thought it was so weird because it's a sports agency, but I was working on music, and couldn't understand, why is this all, so similar? But it is. So I'll show you another video here, because who doesn't like a video? Just a little highlight of my time at SDI when I was saying that we did that show with J. Cole. This is the perfect merger of sports and entertainment.
Grooves on the wax, grooves on the wax. Grooves on the wax, grooves on the wax. Beats bang, make you bruise your brain. I break them down. Grooves on the wax, grooves on the wax. Grooves on the wax, grooves on the wax. Beats bang, make you bruise your brain. I break them down.
One of my favorite events still to this day. And every time I see that video, I remember how funny it was when we were putting that show on, because I was in Calgary when this stage was going in, and Pepsi wanted it moved 10 feet. After it was all done, the lights were in, the audio was in, but it had to move 10 feet because there was a tree in the way, and they wouldn't let me just cut down the tree. So we had to pack everything up overnight and move it, and that was my biggest realization of the corporate world. Impacting live entertainment and the mix of sports and everything like that. So it was a fun night of moving everything, that's for sure. So that's basically my story of how I got to where I am. Obviously very broad, very Coles Notes, but I learned a lot in those times, and it was still to this day, sometimes I do regret not staying with the concert promotion aspect, but I think I got the best of both worlds now. So after my time at SDI, I was there for 5 years. I was able to take a bunch of that knowledge of the marketing agency world, which is a fun world if you guys are ever thinking about going into it. Highly recommend starting out there as well. And moved me over to Maple Leaf Sports. So as you saw by the video, we are the owner of the Maple Leafs. We're the owner of the Raptors, Toronto FC, the Argos, as well as a boasting live entertainment portfolio as well. So the Argos just came over to us last year, but our live department is something that people often don't think of, right? When you think of MLSE and you think of the Leafs, you think of the Leafs, you think of the Raptors, you think of maybe Drake, but we're a lot more than that, which is growing and growing and growing. And in the last 3 years that I've been there, we've went from, call it 60, 70 shows a year in Scotiabank Arena to well over 100 now. So we're very, very busy. And we're one of the number one arenas in Canada. Well, we are the number one arena in Canada. We are as of the charts, at the end of the year, it was number 7 in North America and number 11 in the world. So pretty crazy when you think about it. There's a lot of arenas in the world, and we're usually right in there. So That's us, but on top of that, we also have a big portfolio of other properties. So Coca-Cola Coliseum, formerly Ricoh Coliseum, obviously Scotiabank Arena, formerly Air Canada Centre, BMO Field, BMO Training Ground, where TFC practices, BioSteel Centre, which actually is outdated, is now the OVO Athletic Centre, which we announced 2 weeks ago, I think. That's where the Raptors practice. We have our foundation, we have MasterCard Center, Maple Leaf Square, Real Sports Apparel, MLSE Launchpad, Real Sports Bar and Grill, 11. We have 2 TV networks as well, Leaf Nation Network and NBA TV. And I'm sure I'm forgetting some more of our other properties because I feel like we just keep on growing. But we also have a very large partnership with Live Nation, which a lot of people don't realize. So we work very, very closely. Has anybody heard of Live Nation? They produce most shows. So they produce typically 60% of the concerts, 60-70% of the concerts that come through our building. And we also help them out with Budweiser Stage. So Budweiser Stage, formerly Molson Amphitheater, just down the street from us, is something that we work very closely with as well. But diving more into kind of what my role is, it's always funny because I have a hard time kind of explaining it because the easiest way is to say that it's the catch-all from every other department. We have 800 full-time staff at MLSE. Of that, 150, give or take, are in marketing, which is crazy. That includes our video studio. We have a full-time graphic studio. Each team has their own brand team and game presentation team, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So my role falls to be, I oversee the marketing for everything outside of your core teams. So outside of Leafs, outside of Raptors, outside of TFC, outside of Argos, everything else falls to me. 90% of that being concerts, but there is sometimes that 10% of our marquee events, so NBA All-Star, Grey Cup, World Cup of Hockey, any of those other big marquee events, and any of the random rentals that would come through, so Invictus Games, for example, We Day, all that would fall to me and my team. And then within that, we have a few different roles that we do, and it's always evolving, it's always changing. But it really breaks down kind of into those 3 pillars that I put down. So concert marketing, which is more of our B2C aspect. Venue marketing in a B2B. So you might think that Scotiabank Arena is always busy and it's just busy because. But we actually have a massive strategy to make sure that all these agents and managers in Beverly Hills are routing our building, and I'll get more into that in a bit. And then venue brand marketing, which really wasn't as big this time last year. But with the recent name change from Air Canada Centre to Scotiabank Arena, Scotiabank really has a big initiative of wanting name adoption and making sure that people aren't calling it ACC anymore. And it's been a challenge, and it's been a lot of learning for myself to not say ACC, but we do it. So those are the really big 3 venue brands, venue marketing, and concert marketing. But overall, the main goal is to really just ensure our building is full. So if there's a show, that it's sold, and that if there's no show, that there's a show. So no dark days, and of those shows, bums in seats is huge for us. So I'll dive into concert marketing, and really this is the bread and butter of what my role is. It's making sure that you know about a show, and it's making sure that you want to buy a ticket to that show. So what we'll do is we'll work with the tours when they are deciding that they're going to announce shortly. We'll work with them and we'll localize a plan. Every tour is different, and when they're based out of LA, they don't really know Toronto. They don't know what billboard is good, what billboard is bad, what newspaper is good or newspaper is bad. Believe it or not, in the States, newspaper is still a lot bigger than it is in Canada. So there's all those little nuances that we'll work with them to help. We'll do that for every show outside of a Live Nation show just because they have a local office, so they tend to do it themselves. But perfect example was yesterday we did our kickoff call with a very well-known artist that I can't tell you about, but used to have a residency in Vegas and is now going on tour. I'll leave you with that. We had a call with her team yesterday to do a discovery session of, what are we going to do? How are we going to make this happen? How are we going to tell everybody that the show's happening? And we'll often really sit at the table with ticketing and with their teams to make sure that we're doing this properly and that we're not going to spend too much money and that we're going to make sure that people know about this show. So we're going to start with a a teaser campaign, which is fun. We don't often get to do that, so I'm excited to actually roll with one of those. So we're going to do a bit of a takeover in Yonge and Dundas Square, promoting this show, but not telling you what it is. It's just going to be a promo of her, and people are going to figure it out, hopefully. But it's always nice to do the teaser. We'll then work with them to, they've briefed us with, here's our budget. Here's kind of what we typically do with this type of artist. These are the type of radio stations we usually hit. This typically doesn't work. This kind of works, yada, yada, yada. We'll go back to the table, and we'll put together a marketing plan for them. So as we speak, one of my coordinators is back in the office just pounding the phone with all of our media partners and calling out our radio stations, our out-of-home providers and all that, and trying to gather all this information. It's a very quick turnaround because we're announcing in a week, so building a $100,000 marketing campaign in a week is a big ask, especially with the amount of layers of approval. So we'll do that with them right now, and then we'll also sit and make sure that, is there any other shows going on sale at the same time? If so, maybe we should probably look at moving the on-sale date so that we're not, blowing up Ticketmaster and having more competition. We'll make sure that the ticketing prices are okay for the market. We'll make sure that the pre-sales are distributed and happening, and kind of piece all of our departments together and make sure that we're successful in an on-sale. We'll work with our PR teams and make sure that we get a lot of earned media out of it as well. So the difference between paid media and earned media, in case you guys aren't aware, it's often misconstrued, but earned media being like actual stories with CP24 picking it up or CTV picking it up or the news. So that's earned media because you really got to work for it. Whereas paid media, pretty simple, you're just paying for it. So that's one element, that's the bread and butter, and I really just kind of oversee that aspect most of the time and have my team execute. And that also would be the execution on the on sale, but then on the actual show day, which would be making sure that our settlement package is ready to go. So we'll buy all this media on their behalf, but then at settlement, when we're cutting them the check for all the tickets sold, we take that back and we need to audit it and have a very clear-cut package for them of what ran, what didn't run. We'll do affidavits and spot logs to prove that spot ran on The Price is Right, or whatever the case is for that show. Venue marketing is more of kind of what I head up more so than the rest of my team, so that would be the B2B aspect. And it's very, very, very important that we stay top of mind for everybody down in Beverly Hills. So basically the music industry, if you were to pick one spot, is Beverly Hills. New York being kind of secondary. And then Toronto actually being kind of that third level. So we've really grown the market. We've grown, many artists through that market. And it's important that we stay top of mind, like I said. So you might think that every artist is going to hit Toronto and that it's just a given fact, and it's not necessarily the case. There's a lot of difference that we have to put into the rental structure. Is a date available is also a really tricky one. And we'll work with them to make sure that, and work closely with Tourism Toronto actually, to make sure that you're thinking of Toronto and proving that our economy is able to take maybe 4 shows instead of 2. And that you want to come to the city. That's step number 1. Step number 2 is once you've decided you're going to route your tour through Toronto, you want to come to Scotiabank Arena. You don't want to do 2 shows at the Danforth Music Hall or 1 show at Rogers Centre. If you're going to do Rogers Centre, let's do 4 shows with us. If you're going to do 4 Massey Halls, maybe let's do 1 show with us. So it's a matter of figuring out what artists can play those rooms. We're lucky enough that we actually have a few different sized rooms, and that being Coca-Cola Coliseum, so that's a 9,000 cap arena where the Marleys play. So can you do 9,000 at Coke, or do you think we can do 13 at Scotiabank? Or do we need to do 16 over Budweiser Stage, or what's that look like? So we'll do this in a few different ways. So it's kind of industry relations as well. There's a few main pillar events that we'll go to. Billboard Touring Summit in Beverly Hills, Polestar Live in Beverly Hills, Venues Now in New York, and AIBA in Nashville. So that's 4 times a year the industry meets for a conference, and we make sure that we have Scotiabank Arena on everything and everywhere. So we'll typically sponsor events, and we'll do the tacky little things like the lanyard for your badge, but we'll actually host people with those events. So that's a big part of it. But then there's also the trade publications, and typically these are actually all magazines. And so we'll make sure that we have enough editorial stories, whether it's paid editorial or traditional earned, as well as actually just traditional advertisements in these magazines, which seems kind of silly, but it's really just keeping the industry happy. Spending money with them over a course of a year helps out a lot. So that's a big part of what I do, is making sure that that building is full and working with our programming team, that we have no dark days. So like I said, I think we're on track for 105 concerts this year, which, if you think about it, is absolutely insane. It proves that Toronto is huge. It proves that, more so than that our market is doing well, but it proves that the live entertainment industry is booming. And I always screw up this quote, so I'm going to try it again. But you used to tour to sell records. Now I always do it. You used to sell records to tour, and now you tour to sell records. So the industry is completely swapped, and it's a huge opportunity for us. Budweiser stage is at 70 shows in the summer alone. So if you take a look at those massive shows, that's almost 200 shows in one city, before you factor in all the other theaters and everything else. The fact that I like to rub into everybody else at MLSE is that there's 41 home games for the Leafs and Raptors before playoffs. And if you combine both of those, you still don't hit the amount of shows that we have in the building. So it's busy. Our ops team doesn't like it because they can't fix the building and do any maintenance, because we put a show in there all the time. But it's a good problem to have. So another part of that venue marketing is really keeping the artist happy as well. So when you're in the building, how do we make you feel like you're the home team, instead of just coming in and going into a crappy dressing room and can't wait to play the show and then get out and go to another city. So this is their home for the day. So we make them feel at home. So we have a team that does their dressing rooms and all that traditional stuff that you kind of have to do. But me and my team are challenged to make them go, yeah, I can't wait to be at Scotiabank Arena instead of the Bell Center in Montreal, or whatever that case is. We're all a little competitive. We're not in sports in the music industry, but this is our competition, is artist welcomes and artist gifting, which is something that seems silly, but it's really becoming its own beast. It's a lot of fun, but it's very time consuming. So what we'll do is we'll do custom artist gifts. So it started traditionally way back, maybe 10 years ago, not that long ago when you think about it, but you would probably get a jersey. Here's a Leafs jersey with your name on it. Great, amazing, super fun. But now everybody's just got jerseys for every team. And then what do we do when you come back? That's boring. Nobody's gonna wear it. If they wear it on stage, that's awesome. That's a win. Everybody gets a good cheer. But that's as far as it goes. And then it's probably, left behind and a waste of money. So we've always prided ourselves on being the leader in this. And when I inherited this program 3 years ago, it was already with some really good legs, but we're lucky enough to have an organization that actually helps us do this. A lot of my peers in other arenas want to do it, and they have the ideas to do it, but they don't have the budget to support it, so we're very lucky in that sense. But a couple examples. So Harry Styles, he loves Scrabble, oddly enough. So we decided, let's make you a Scrabble board. And there's a lot more photos that show a lot more detail, but we've taken all of his tattoos and used them as game pieces as well. Mumford & Sons, they're stylish fellows, so we decided we'd do bow ties, but wooden bow ties, because we've got to be as hipster as we can. We did something a little different for the Arkells. We did plaques, kind of like when you get a gold record or something like that, commemorating their first headline show at Scotiabank Arena. So part of that is also going back to our, and I'll touch on it in a bit, but our responsibility to the industry to help develop artists. Not everybody's an arena touring artist, but we want you to be. And everybody is, all these legacy acts are starting to retire, so what's our intake? Excuse me. So instead of a traditional gift for the Arkells, we decided, this is a big milestone. You just sold out your hometown arena, and that's huge, so congratulations to them. Drake, we've had Drake so many times that we were really challenged with this one, because what do you give Drake? What do you give Drake? This is his building, So we we spent a lot of time on this one, and you might have seen it, it went actually a lot more viral than I anticipated. It was picked up by every TV show, like every breakfast TV show. It was funny because you could see all of the Reddit forums just going nuts about it, and people wanted to buy it, and people were tweeting about it, and all this. And then you could see when it hit like China, because then it's so much later, and all of a sudden it's going around the world. Anyway, we decided to make Monopoly OVO edition. We had every game piece done, which you don't see in this photo. But we had everything from like Jimmy in the wheelchair, from Degrassi. We had Baca was one of the cards for security, and every detail. There's over 100 Drake and Toronto references. Jail was the 401. I wish I actually had the list because it's quite hilarious. So that was our biggest one. There's actually awards that happen at another conference, the Event and Arena Marketing Conference, which is actually coming up in June in Toronto. And last year was the first year that they added this as a category, just because it is such a beast that we're all trying to outdo each other now. And I can proudly say we won the very first award for the weekend. We actually did an arcade game for him with 400 games in it. Bruno Mars, so it was the 24K Gold tour. So we had a cardboard box for the packaging of it in the shape of a gold bar. And then since it was 90s themed, what's more 90s than an old school Game Boy? And we had it dipped in gold. And you can't see here, but we had an artist redo the labels for each one of those games with Cardi B before she canceled, and Bruno Mars as the game people. So that was a lot of fun. The moment we gave it to him, he just started playing it, so it was a win. Shawn Mendes, once again, hometown boy. So this was his first show that we did. We decided we would go into his dressing room before he got there, and we would kind of the same thing as the Arkells, is congratulate him for, this is your hometown arena, welcome home. He loved that so much that we decided we would do it again when he came on his birthday. So we threw him kind of a birthday party. But he's outgrown us now, so he's going to the stadium. So we're kind of sad about that. So that's a huge part. And this eats up so much of my team's time that sometimes I wonder if it's worth it. But then you get another home run gift, and then you just have to keep on going. So I saw that there was a couple photos on before I got here. So Pink, sometimes we'll do a donation, because what do you give some of these people, right? And some people are so passionate about a certain cause. So we'll do a donation on their behalf. And so Pink, we did that for the 519 in Toronto, and she was super happy about that. Yeah, the amount of gifts that we've done is crazy, but it's a lot of fun. And the way that we do it, I often get asked, is we'll actually have my intern. It's almost like my intern's full-time job, is to go in and research that artist. And don't think about gifting ideas. Just research that artist. Find out the weirdest things for me. Just when you think you're getting kind of creepy and you're restraining order almost, just keep going, because you're almost there. And then we'll regroup with the team, and we'll go, okay, well, these are really random, weird facts. I can work with that. So Ariana Grande, we also did Monopoly, so we kind of did another idea at the same time. But Ariana loves Monopoly, apparently, so she just plays it on the tour bus. So we're like, let's make her Monopoly. Drake, we did Monopoly because he's got a Monopoly on the game. It was just more references as opposed to he actually likes the board game. But Ariana loves the game, so okay, that's great. We actually had we took a photo of her playing in like 2015 at Air Canada Centre and had it 3D rendered as a game piece. So it was actually physically her in the building, which was great. We didn't get to present it to her, but then she saw it online, and then we got a phone call the next day saying, hey, can you ship this to us? So that was also a win. It was great. But yeah, so we'll have them dive into it, research, and then we'll hit the races with that. Oops. So the third part is brand marketing. So we used to have another brand called MLSE Live, which when I was here last year I would have been speaking about, but we don't have that anymore. So it used to be, how do we make our music department at MLSE be a team? How do we make it the fourth team at the time, before the Argos? So MLSE Live was something that I inherited. And after 2 years of working with it, we decided, or of me working with it, so it was in its 4th year, decided that maybe this isn't the best strategy, so we decided to kind of shift that a little bit. And so far it's been a huge success, and it worked out very, very well with our timing. We didn't want to shift it to Air Canada Centre as the voice, but Scotiabank, with the naming rights deal, wanted to have a better voice on social. And so it was a natural progression, so we decided to kill MLSE Live and add that voice and that content into Scotiabank Arena. So does anybody follow Scotiabank Arena by any chance? No, you should. Give us a couple follows. But we've decided to move all of our content to that. And that's really part of our venue branding strategy. So it's kind of 2 phases. It's name adoption, which is huge for us and is obviously the mandate by Scotiabank. It was an $800 million deal, so I think it's fair for them to want everybody to call it by its real name now. But we also needed to have an always-on content strategy. So what does that look like, and how are we doing that? So we have a venue host and community manager. So her name is Emily. She's behind the computer and managing our social channels, but she's also in front of the camera as our venue host. So it's very unique. No other arena does this. So we're pretty happy with our strategy so far. But when we have an artist in town, she'll try and get an interview. So we have a producer, and we have a dedicated camera guy, and we'll try and film whatever we can. So Nitro Circus was in the building, so we had one of the riders take Emily around and show her, what's backstage, what does this look like for a Nitro Circus show? And then WWE, we did the same thing, and we were interviewing, maybe not talent, because that's always hard to get, but not everybody necessarily wants to see the talent in our eyes, right? Like that's easy. You're on stage, you can go to ET Canada and watch an interview. Those are boring. So what we do is let's talk to the tour manager of the show. Tell us about the show, right? It's kind of cool to know how many trucks are coming in and all of that behind the scenes stuff that people don't normally see. So we'll do that. But this is where it comes down to being really, really cognizant of KPIs and understanding what your partner goals are. So when I got briefed on Scotiabank Arena switching names, I found out in the news, just like everybody else, they kept it very, very tight to their heart, which makes a lot of sense. But once we sat down with Scotiabank and discovered their goals, that's where that always-on content strategy came from. That's why we needed to figure out what is that going to look like. They sat down, they gave us their goals, and we came back with a solution, and that was a series called Inside Scotiabank Arena. So how do we make content out of nothing? We have 4 walls. That sounds boring, right? It's just a building. There's a lot that goes in that building. There's a lot that happens. So how do we showcase that? And so we now have a series that launched, I think it was January, like early January we launched it. And every 2 weeks, there's an episode that comes out. It's 6-7 minutes long, nothing crazy, but it's longer than your traditional 1 minute, 2 minute video that you would typically want to do. And we bring Emily behind the scenes of the building. So how is the ice maintained? So let's throw on her Zamboni and have her work with those guys and bring us to the ice plant. I learned a lot about it during these tours. It was actually kind of fascinating. So we did ice maintenance. We did the Raptors dance pack. We did game presentation. So how is it actually coming to life when you're going to a Leafs game? All of those things have become an episode, and we've got about 12 of them, and it's been a huge success. And that was us finding a solution to what Scotiabank's problem was. But speaking of which, I'll show you another video.
Breaking news, the Air Canada Centre will be renamed the Scotiabank Arena.
Oh, Air Canada Centre, we hardly knew you.
MLSE has reached an agreement with Scotiabank to rename the Air Canada Centre.
This is the biggest naming rights agreement in the world.
In July 2018, the Air Canada Centre became Scotiabank Arena. It was one of the biggest sponsorship deals in North America. But for Scotiabank, there was an even bigger deal, getting sports fans to call the arena by its new name. Research told us it could take up to 20 months for the new name to gain traction.
Why would they want to do that?
It's always going to be Air Canada Centre to me.
It'd be definitely a change.
Why do I have to see it on my sports center?
But the way fans were feeling, it could take longer. How? In less than 20 months, could we get fans to break a 20-year habit of calling the arena the ACC? With a game plan rooted in psychology. Because we weren't changing an opinion, we were changing a habit. First, we updated the name in thousands of places, from signage to location tags. Next, we used a high-frequency media strategy to target fans at every step of their journey to the arena. We leveraged influencers and team assets on social. And we had the city's hockey heroes create even more reminders.
Click here to see when your Leafs will be hitting the ice. I'll be there too. See you all at Scotiabank Arena.
And for the Leafs and Raptors home openers, we partnered with Metrolinx to create the first ever branded Presto cards. In less than an hour before each home opener, we handed out 20,000 free cards to enthusiastic fans at TTC and Go stations. All this led to some pretty impressive highlights. Our social awareness matched the 13-year-old Rogers Center, but we reached their level in only 4 months. Positive opinion of Scotiabank shot way up. Consideration too. Fans started to welcome the new name. And for Scotiabank, that was the slam dunk, hat trick, triple encore they were looking for.
So Scotiabank Arena, no more Air Canada Centre. As you can see, it's been a success so far. It's been a lot of work. July 1st, when we did the actual physical change, was one of the craziest days I think I've had in a very long time. We physically changed the signs the first moment we could. We decommissioned the building on June 30th with all the old ACC signs, and then July 1st, we all spent our holiday watching signage go in. And we had, I think, 2 cranes inside the bowl at the same time, just changing everything from the scoreboard to, there's a lot of logos in that building. There's a lot of logos. If you've ever been in there, there's logos on the end cap of every seat. There's 18,000 seats. All of the signs on the outside of the building, all that sort of thing. So it was a huge challenge, and this really goes to when we talked about Rogers Center in 13 years, I think it was. We did it in 4 months. Huge part of that is because of social media. It's really changed the way that we're able to engage with our fans. Huge backlash off the start, and we knew that would happen. But I think everybody's kind of embracing it, and maybe it's just me because I'm drinking the punch and I work there, but I think it's working. I haven't heard many people call it Air Canada Centre, other than a few internet trolls here and there. So that's us listening to Scotiabank and realizing what their goals are. On the same day, we changed Ricoh Coliseum to Coca-Cola Coliseum, so that was a very fun weekend. So that's that, and then very quickly, when we look at kind of trends of what we see, the live industry going. Streaming, like I said, has really changed the industry completely, but for the better. When you look at just before, streaming really came into play, it was looking pretty scary for the music industry for a while, right? With illegal downloads and all of that. But the live industry is growing and growing and growing, and the nice thing about it is people love experiences, right? So the trends continue to play out with those live experiences. The shows are getting more complex. The shows are getting more integrated, and you're going to see streaming of shows soon. You're going to see AI and VR in shows, and it's becoming quite an interesting landscape. But one of those things, and I mentioned it earlier, is legacy acts retiring. You're going to see a lot of venues realizing very quickly that you have a responsibility, and that's something that we take very dear to our heart, is especially being in Toronto, of all places. The Rolling Stones will only tour for so long. If you look right now, how many farewell tours do we have? Phil Collins, Kiss, Elton John, the list goes on and on and on. Those are big ticket moneymakers, and when we take those out of the industry, it's not going to be good for us, right? I mean, keep in mind, retirement is something that they all say just to boost tickets, and then they'll be back. But Elton John's tour is 4 years long, 3 years long, so it's a very long retirement. But you're going to see a lot of this responsibility. How do we be an incubator for those next artists? And that's when we look at our venue network. We're actually very proud of being able to take a band and have them play the Danforth Music Hall and develop them and put faith in them and then bring them up. So the Glorious Sons, if anybody's heard of them, we worked very, very closely with their team when they were planning their tour because they weren't sure they wanted to do an arena. We put in extra dollars out of our pocket and extra resources out of our pocket because we thought it made more sense for them to play Scotiabank Arena in a lower bowl cut down. We didn't open the 300 level and we covered it so you couldn't see it. We thought that that was a better play for them. We worked very closely with their management, with their agent, with their entire team to make sure that we were able to help them and do that, and financially that they could do it, and then also just get them to that next level. And our Kells are the same way. And so that's a huge thing that we're going to start to see. And a lot of these non-traditional shows are starting to really eat up a lot of days in our calendar as well in a really good way. K-pop. Who would have thought K-pop is so unbelievably crazy? Has anybody ever been to a K-pop show? If you haven't, I highly suggest just experience one. Just experience one. They're the loudest shows. I've never heard anybody scream as loud. I've never heard the music be so loud. I've never felt so old when I'm there. But they're such an experience. And even though if you can't understand what they're saying, it doesn't matter. Latin shows are also, like, ever since Despacito has really, really paved the way for just a whole other genre to go mainstream. And we'll work very closely with those promoters as well, because there's a lot of shows that would maybe go to the Powerade Center in Brampton, and that's great, and that sells tickets, but it doesn't keep it mainstream. So how do we help that promoter develop this genre of music in our city? In LA, absolutely, super easy. You can do the Forum, you can do Staples Center. Toronto, the Latin market is really starting to boom a little bit more. So just very quickly, my advice to you would be a few small things, but have passion for what you want to do. You might sit in this classroom and not have any clue what part you want to go into, and the reason I told my story was to show that there's so many different areas of the music industry or of the sports industry. You might just think, I want to go to sports, but like what part? You could be a physiotherapist for a team. You could be in ticketing for a team. Maybe you like crunching numbers at the same time. Yeah, ticketing, or an analyst, or there's so many things. And when we look at MLSE, for example, you could be a finance master but love sports. Now you can work in sports on payroll. You could do anything you do at any other company in that area that you want. Just focus on what you want and have it. But the biggest thing would be passion. Like, if you don't like what you're doing, you don't love what you're doing, don't do it. You're just going to waste your time. I know it's super typical and stereotypical to say, but yeah. Get out there, take the crap jobs. I know everybody wants to go and just like be at the top right off the start. Put your dues in, volunteer, just pound the pavement, it'll pay off. And then network. Just make sure you network, but don't network for the sake of networking. I'm a big fan of like organic networking and not going to networking events and passing out business cards and thinking that's going to work, because it's not. Be at events that you want to be seen at and make those connections. So networking is a word that I don't really like because it's not networking, it's make those connections. And that's all I have for you guys. That's it. How do we do for time?